So a huge concern for any consumer, me, you, anyone, is how much is this termite treatment going to cost? So let me go ahead and just cover a little bit of what's involved in that. In our area, there are solid slab homes, meaning that the house was built on a concrete foundation touching the soil. Then there are pier and beam houses, or houses that are elevated off of the ground, have a crawl space that's anywhere from, some are inaccessible, we cannot crawl underneath them, it's just simply not enough room, it was the way they're built. Then there are other houses that have anywhere from 18 inches of clearance all the way to 3 to 4 feet of clearance. So with that, it's very common that with the pier and beam houses, it is required that the technician be able to gain access to determine what all's involved. Older houses have less crawl space, meaning it does become a little bit more difficult for the technicians to actually conduct the inspection, as well as the number of pier and beams. So the piers and the beams are what your house sits on. So just imagine a series of columns in a grid pattern, and if those pier and beams are touching the soil, the termites can go right up and they will find locations on the underside of the house. And if you have, say, wooden floors, for instance, they can start feasting or feeding on the wooden floors and then move their way over to the walls and into the structure itself. Whereas it's a little bit more difficult for them with a solid concrete foundation. They may come up the edges of the perimeters. However, with the solid concrete foundations, over time, you do get the occasional crack in the foundation as it settles. Well, that may act as an open invitation for termites as well. They only need the smallest of cracks in that foundation, and they can find their way into the wall voids or the structure in bathrooms, kitchens, or the inside of the house, and never actually come in on the exterior perimeter. So the termites in general, they will find a way to get in, whether it's a crack in the foundation or if it's a pier and beam. They're being offered many different locations for points of entry. So that's what we're going to be looking for. So another major concern in regards to termites and how they gain entry into the house is the pipes that are part of the drainage and plumbing, the incoming water, the outgoing sewage, things like that. Those pipes were there first. Your foundation was poured around them with a lot of these older houses, and some of the newer houses, they are using different techniques. However, a concern that we're going to have over time is that as the house settles, that concrete surrounding the pipes may have degraded, settled, or just eroded, and then anything from roaches to ants can find their way in. But our primary concern here is going to be termites, because they follow that cool pipe, that water source. It's going to be in the ground. It's subterranean termites are following this cool water source right to your house. So of course, what they're going to find is they're going to find a water source and wood, and that's unfortunately going to be your residence or your business. So that's something that we have to concern ourselves with over time, is making sure that doing routine inspections, that any specialist is going to want to look at those places: the underside of the home or the underside of the business, if it's a pier and beam or elevated house, or places that are accessible to termites, such as bath traps, plumbing areas, or the accessible exterior along the foundation or the perimeter. All right, so we were talking about the cost involved. So with that, once we've determined, one, is it a pier and beam home? Is it a solid concrete foundation or a monolithic slab? What we want to determine is the scope of work involved, meaning the location, the intensity of the infestation, how much drilling or trenching is involved. If we have to trench on a solid concrete foundation, then we may have to go around the entire perimeter of the house. If it has what's known as bull rock or a French drain, we may have to use a rod to bypass all the rocks that compose this drain. So we'll inject the soil, it bonds to the soil, it has a long-lasting residual effect, assuming the soil is not disturbed. Vice versa, we'll have to do that with the piers and beams for elevated homes. So with this column that touches the soil, we will have to trench around the perimeter of each individual column. So some houses can be composed of 15, 20, 25. Larger houses could have upwards of 100. So that entire foundation has to be crawled by a specialist. The perimeter of each one of those columns will have to be treated with a termiticide. So once again, depending on say how many columns are going to be treated, how much trenching is involved, how much rotting is involved, or the quantity of chemical to be used. So as a standard part of our proposal, well, we will include the type of pest being treated, the quantity of chemical, the location of the chemical, what's to be treated, and the method. So there is a standard price, but it's based on the amount of work and chemical involved in the total treatment. And that's going to be determined at the time of the inspection.